was a blatant cheap shot in Laguna Beach Sunday night. Video catches a man walk up behind Trump supporter R.C. Maxwell, then take a swing at him.
If the optics were completely different and I was a Black Lives Matter supporter and I was attacked on the Trump side of a protest, I would be spotlight on CNN right now.
Maxwell met up with me on Tuesday, telling me the attack was unprovoked.
I went over to the left side to see if I can engage them with dialogue, and I was instantly encircled by the so-called anti-fascists.
The man who allegedly sucker punched him quickly identified himself on Twitter after the rally, tweeting that he did it because Maxwell wouldn't stop talking about Trump and that he isn't racist. When someone called for his arrest, he replied, quote, "Please arrest me, LMFAO." Laguna Beach police granted his request. 20-year-old Richard Losey was arrested Tuesday evening and charged with battery and making terroristic threats.
I think the fact that I'm a black conservative causes a lot of problems for the left side because there's no way they can really resolve that according to their narrative of what they think Trump supporters are. So I think that was something that was a bit triggering to the other side.
The sucker punch wasn't Maxwell's only issue at the rally. Hours before it happened, I tried to interview him after we saw him get shoved by members of Antifa.
Jesus! People are violent. Keep your hands to yourself, man.
We were quickly surrounded by counter-protesters, which led Maxwell to speak out.
I have a different political opinion. That's no reason to treat me less human. But these so-called anti-fascists are literally the fascists themselves. They're the ones who want to engage in dialogue, violence, and not dialogue. And you just wanted to ask me a couple of questions about what was happening, and we could not even conduct an interview.
Maxwell believes counter-protesters targeted him because he's a black man supporting Donald Trump.
So I was getting lots of specific comments like, "You're a sellout, you're an Uncle Tom."
And he says it's that attitude that stops America's political divide from ever being bridged.
Dialogue is being shut down. And
to be white in so many ways is to be raised to be functionally illiterate on the topic of race. I am white, and part of being white is that I was not raised to see myself in racial terms. I mean, I understood that somebody had race, but not really me. To be white is to see oneself outside of race, to see oneself as a unique, special individual, exempt from the forces of socialization.
So everybody, when I never met in person, I never met Jordan Peterson in person. But I said to him when we met right before lunch, something that is said to me by so many people who meet me for the first time: I feel like I know you. And that is the highest compliment in effect. I now understand what a compliment it is when I receive it, because I never gave it to somebody before you. And I have watched you for hours and listened to you and read your book. And in fact, I didn't just read your book, I heard your book from you. So I want to tell you something without embarrassing you. But I think I like to, you open your heart and your mind, and so do I. When I was very young, I realized that God or nature had given me what I have called a goodness detector. And I always knew when I was in the presence of a good person, because that's all I really care about. I think brains are wildly overrated, wildly. That's why I think you're not bright if you join Mensa. Why you would want to announce to the world your IQ is so bizarre to me that I'm sure there are nice people there, but I don't understand it. But I always picked up that, and I've always been right. I'm batting 1,000 essentially. And when I heard you read your book, the passion comes from, I just want to help people lead a better life. And it's really, it's quite overwhelming. You didn't just read that book. I won't say you sang it, but I like that you use music. I'm very much into music too. So this is the man that I'm honored to have this dialogue with, because everybody knows you're bright, but I know you're good. So I wanted to state that at the outset.
I have something to say about that.
Good. That's good.
See, I don't think it's true. I mean, this is why I got motivated to do what I've been doing, and I've been doing what I've been doing for, I would say, since about 1979, in one form or another, because things take a long time to generate. And one of the things I learned in the early 80s was that people have a great capacity for evil, and I didn't really understand that of myself until the early 80s, something like that, after meditating on it for a long time. And so I would say, it's not that I would never claim to be good. I think it's dangerous. But I did become terrified of how terrible I could be. And I mean, I became terrified about how terrible human beings could be, and that's one thing, but that's easy. It's easy to confuse that with other human beings. You know, it's a different thing to understand that it's true of yourself. I often recommend to my students that they read history as a perpetrator and not as a victim or a hero. And people very seldom do that, and it's no wonder. But I would say, perhaps, that I became terrified enough from learning what I learned that I tried to avoid the pathways that lead people to the dark places that they go. And there's something in that that might approximate good.
Yeah, it does approximate good. I would agree with that.
I'll never forget a moment of standing beside a black man leading a workshop on race, and a white woman said to him, "I don't see color." He said, "Well, then how are you going to see racism? Because I am black. I do think you know that, and I have a different experience than you do. And you're not going to be able to understand that, and you're not going to be able to support the parts of that experience that are really painful and problematic if you refuse to acknowledge my reality." I don't see color is really a way of saying I refuse to acknowledge your reality.
You know, I just fished that email out of my spam folder. I'm so sorry. But there are times when we are unwilling participants in deception, and that can have dramatic costs for us. Last year saw $997 billion in corporate fraud alone in the United States. That's an eyelash under $1 trillion. That's 7% of revenues. Deception can cost billions. Think Enron, Madoff, the mortgage crisis, or in the case of double agents and traitors like Robert Hansen or Aldrich Ames, lies can betray our country. They can compromise our security. They can undermine democracy. They can cause the deaths of those that defend us. Deception is actually serious business. This con man, Henry Oberlander, he was such an effective con man, British authorities say he could have undermined the entire banking system of the Western world. And you can't find this guy on Google. You can't find him anywhere. He was interviewed once, and he said the following. He said, "Look, I've got one rule." And this was Henry's rule. He said, "Look, everyone is willing to give you something. They're ready to give you something for whatever it is they're hungry for. And that's the crux of it. If you don't want to be deceived, you have to know what is it that you're hungry for."
What's important about that narrative is it reveals what the person thinks racism is. So if the person is using proximity, fondness across race as evidence of a lack of racism, in order for that to be good evidence, a racist must not be able to do that. So that rests on an understanding that a racist cannot tolerate proximity to people of color. And I'm hoping that we can see that's pretty absurd, because trust me, even avowed racists can tolerate being around people of color, and often are.
Lying is an attempt to bridge that gap, to connect our wishes and our fantasies about who we wish we were, how we wish we could be, with what we're really like. And boy, are we willing to fill in those gaps in our lives with lies. On a given day, studies show that you may be lied to anywhere from 10 to 200 times. Now, granted, many of those are white lies.
Not talk about any other issue without talking about how race informs that issue. And when someone says it's about class, that tends to function as a way to get race off the table.
Strangers lied 3 times within the first 10 minutes of meeting each other. Now, when we first hear this data, we recoil. We can't believe how prevalent lying is. We're essentially against lying. But if you look more closely, the plot actually thickens.
And focusing on race is not what did it. I would say not focusing on race, refusing to grapple with how race shapes virtually everything is what keeps us divided. And that is a very white narrative. All of those narratives function to get race off the table. Close the exploration, exempt the person from any further engagement, and protect the racial hierarchy and the white position with it, which is an unequal hierarchy. The challenge I want to offer my fellow white people is changing the question from if to how. So dominant culture asks if I'm racist, and I want to change that question to how have I been shaped by the forces of racism? How is racism manifesting in my life? Because it circulates 24/7, 365. None of us can be and none of us were exempt from its forces.
We lie more to strangers than we lie to coworkers. Extroverts lie more than introverts. Men lie 8 times more about themselves than they do other people. Women lie more to protect other people. If you're in an average married couple, you're going to lie to your spouse in 1 out of every 10 interactions. Now, you may think that's bad. If you're unmarried, that number drops to 3. Lying's complex. It's woven into the fabric of our daily and our business lives. We're deeply ambivalent about the truth. We parse it out on an as-needed basis, sometimes for very, very good reasons, and other times just because we don't understand the gaps in our lives. That's truth number 2 about lying. We're against lying, but we're covertly for it in ways that our society has sanctioned for centuries and centuries and centuries. It's as old as breathing. It's part of our culture. It's part of our history. Think Dante, Shakespeare, the Bible, news of the world.